Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am going to walk you through some super interesting questions that were actually asked to me in Capgemini software developer interview for 2025 April batch. So the first question was about string transformation based on character frequency. The input they gave me was something like this: a random looking string with repeated characters. And the goal was to rearrange it first, count how many times each character occurs, then sort the characters based on their frequency in ascending order, and finally build the string accordingly. At first, this might sound a bit complex, but if you break it down into small steps, it becomes super manageable. First step: counting the frequency. Whenever you hear the word count, think of using a JavaScript object or a map. Objects are great for mapping key value pairs, where the key is the character and the value is the number of times it appears. Now, while coding, one important trick is initializing the frequency count smartly. Instead of writing a big if else, we can use this shortcut. This line basically says if the character already exists in our object, add 1 to it. If not, initialize it as 0 and then add 1. Tiny trick like this make your code look clean and professional. Second step: sorting the characters based on how many times they appeared. Now, sorting in JavaScript is interesting. By default, sort function will sort elements alphabetically. But here we want to sort numerically based on the frequency. So let's pass a custom comparison function into sort, comparing the frequency of each character. If you don't pass a custom function, you will get wrong results. Third step: once sorting is done, we rebuild the string. And a great method for this is dot repeat, which allows a character to repeat itself n times easily. Finally, let's join all the parts together into a single final output. And that's it. One problem broken down into clear logical mini steps. These types of questions were common because they test your ability to think in terms of data structure and sorting based on custom logic, which are both essential for front end or back end skills. All right, moving on to the second question. One of the most popular coding question ever, the two sum. In this question, they gave an array of numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a target value 7 and asked find the indices of two numbers that add up to the target. Now, even though this is a famous question, what they really want to see in the interview is how you gonna approach it. Do you immediately jump to optimal solution, or do you first write a simple working solution and then improve? Because most companies prefer that you first write a correct brute force solution. So my thought process is: start with two loops, the classic brute function O of n squared solution. Outer loop picks one number, inner loop picks the next number, and check if their sum equals the target. While doing this, I also explained in the interview why I started the inner loop from I plus 1. Because we don't want to add the same element with itself, we also avoid duplicate checking. One important thing here is the comparison operator. So, this array index of I plus array index of j is equals to target. This assigns the value instead of checking it. So you have to correct it to make it strict operator. Once we find the matching pair, you can simply return the indices as an array. And finally, a small bonus tip to give is this approach works, but if time complexity is important, you can optimize to O of n using a hash map. This shows the interviewer that you understood not just the coding but also efficiency and optimization. Now, moving to the next question: closure with counter. Whenever a front end developer interview happens, if JavaScript is involved, closures always comes up. Now, explaining closure can get theoretical, but the best way to explain it is through real code example. So, this is how you can do. You can create a counter function inside the main function, declare a counter variable initialized to 0 and then return another function that increments the count and locks it. Now here's the magic. Even after the outer function finishes executing, the return function remembers the value of count and keeps updating. This happens because of closure, which means that JavaScript functions remember the environment in which they were created. In the interview, you can give an analogy like think of closure like a suitcase. Even after leaving the house, the function carries the suitcase, means its variables, along with it wherever it goes. So every time you call the counter, the value kept increasing 1, 2, 3, and so on. No resetting to 0, no forgetting. You can also highlight where closures are used heavily in real project. In React, hooks like use state, use effect use closures internally. In event listeners that capture state at a certain point. Also in debouncing, throttling, and more. So closure is not just a theoretical concept. They power a lot of real-world JavaScript functionality. If you understand closure deeply, you become much better JavaScript developer. And that brings to us the end of today's video. Today we looked at three important real world problems like string transformation by character frequency to some array problem and closure concept using a counter. I hope you noticed how we wrote the code but also explained the exact thought process when you're under the interview, because that's what make a real difference. If you like this kind of real world coding, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment if you have any doubts. Thanks for watching.